Hello, hello to my True Blue crew. How is everyone today? It feels amazing. I feel like I've got my groove back. I've had, some really good sewing days over the last couple weeks, and life is good. Um, so, what are we working on today? Well, we are almost through this season of Christmas in July, and this is the fast track sampler. You can see the center portion top here on my workspace that has the stretched star block and the flocks of tall geese. And this is the zigzag block at the bottom of one of the rows. And I have been working on this quilt as part of the Tour de Fabric. And there is a link in the description below where you can find out all the information about Tour de Fabric. It's been a month-long event, kind of coinciding with the Tour de France. The organizer is B, and she's got a leaderboard and everything. Hello, Lisa. Thanks for being here. And I decided to offer my half rectangle triangle workshop. That's what these blocks are made up of, are all half rectangle triangles. And then we've been doing a sew along, and I fell behind. Imagine that. And I make things fun, but also more difficult on myself, because whenever I offer a quilt along, I want to quilt along in real time. And so I'm always making a second or third or fifth version of my patterns. And this year I decided to follow that Christmas in July theme. And so I've got all these fun holiday fabrics that I'm sewing with, but I am down to the last borders. So I've been sewing my long strips together with some leader ender units on there. So let me get those out of the way. So let me know what you are sewing this afternoon, or if you're just, sitting back and watching. I do that too in the evenings. And this is my holiday border fabric. Nice pine cones and holly berries. I tend to choose darker borders for the outside of my quilt and my binding. So we will go with that. And now that I said that, I don't know that I purchased enough of this to be the binding. I'll have to run back to the quilt shop and hope they have some left. Hi, Tasha. Welcome in. I appreciate you being here. Hopefully you've got a few minutes of peace before bedtime. My daughter is old enough now that she is going out at about the time I am getting ready for bed. So that's what we're doing. I suppose I can do that. I have sewn these long strips on the short side, and I've just done a straight seam. I actually have a video that describes straight seams versus diagonal seams for sashing strips. Some of these long sashing strips that I used, I did make a diagonal seam, but with this wide border, I would have a lot of waste here if I did a diagonal seam on those, and I didn't calculate the yardage that way. So I want to make sure I have enough fabric. And I was saying I didn't have enough of this fabric for the binding, and I generally wait until my quilt is done before I worry about the binding. So I'll have to find something for the back anyway. So that can be another shopping excursion. But I wanted to get this last border on this quilt so that I can post before the Tour de Fabric event ends on Sunday, I believe. August 3rd it runs. So you can watch all the workshops for free. until through the weekend. And then if you really enjoyed something and want an extended time frame to have access to the videos, there are over I think there's 19 different workshops. You can purchase the extended access pass that gives you through the end of the year. So you've got 3 or 4 more months if you wanted to have access to those 19 workshops. So very reasonable price point on that. Of course, free is always the best. So choose a couple of them, watch them this weekend, and you'll get your money's worth. Tour de Fabric, link in the description. Oh, Lisa was spending time with her grandkids, scrapbooking. Oh, that's fun. My mom takes lots of pictures, of course, when my niece and nephew are in town and all the cousins are together, and of course, me and my brother. So she gets all the generations, but she snaps a lot of pictures, and then she does the digital scrapbook. She makes little books and has them printed, and then she gets multiple copies. So all the grandkids get a copy, and they have memories of their vacations together. So that's really fun. Oh, and Lisa's sewing pillow covers. Okay. Hopefully you can find some sewing time soon. And hello there, Karen. Nice to see you. Yeah, I thought this pine cone stuff was nice. It's winter without being overtly Christmas, although I've got ornaments here on the stars. So you could have this out, not just for December, but and then I started thinking, I've been working with this little bit different size quilt block, and I came up with some holiday blocks. So I am scrambling to get all the details worked out to have a holiday quilt-along starting in September. We'll finish in November so that you have plenty of time to finish your little quilt, whether it's a wall hanging or a full quilt, in time for the holidays. So hop over to True Blue Quilts and look for that. It's listed as a pre-sale right now because I don't have the pattern quite finished yet. So, and I'm going to run the quilt along with some live Zoom sessions. So if you enjoy this Wednesday time frame and would like an interactive experience more than just dropping your comments in the chat, hop on over to truebluequilts.com and sign up for the holidays with a Z quilt along. I've got to pay attention as I'm doing these long seams. So you guys are going to have to keep each other company in the chat while I am busy sewing. Yeah, oh darn, having to go buy some backing fabric. That's going to be torture, right? And I was just trimming some triangles, and then I remembered I have my other border strips to sew together as my leader ender while I'm chain piecing. So like I said, a lot of times for that outer border, you want to use a diagonal seam like I did here. You can see that seam running across. That just makes it a little bit stronger and less likely to come apart at the seam. But I didn't want to have those oversized triangles since this border is so wide. And so I am going to back stitch. And I don't usually do that when I'm quilting. That's more of a garment sewer trick. Whoops. But I will remember for this because it's on that outside edge. I don't want those seams coming apart before I get this thing quilted and bound. So I am going to start and then a back stitch about 5 stitches. And then continue to the end. Back stitch a few stitches. And that one's ready to go. Okay. And I am just going to trim this because I didn't, again, I am cheating so much on this quilt with these borders. I did not measure. I'm just throwing long strips on the edges. And so that means I can just trim right even with this edge of the quilt. And that's my excess fabric that can go in the scrap bin. So I probably would have had plenty to do the diagonal seams, but I didn't want to mess with it on this one. So let me know, are you a perfectionist that always makes your borders to size, or do you wing it like I am doing today? So I just make sure that, I took my 2 width of fabric strips and I'm going to just add that to the edge. Start even with one side. And whoops, maybe I can get it all lined up. Start even with one side and then chop off the other end to match. And I mentioned the new little bit different holiday sampler that I'm working on. Oh, good, Lisa, you wing it also. Glad I'm not the only one. And talking about fabric shopping, I needed borders, and I found a fabric that I am absolutely in love with for this holiday quilt border. It looks like the shimmery lights, like when you turn off all your lights and you just have the Christmas tree lights on, and they just get that kind of soft glow, and you've got the multicolor lights. That's what this fabric looks like. I am so in love with it. And the multicolor works great for a sampler because I just made all the blocks out of my scrap bin. a true stash buster project. And I was pleasantly surprised that I was able to get the whole thing done in a weekend. I had a Friday night sewing group, and I was able to get 7 of the blocks done. And then I went to a Saturday group and got the other 2 done, and most of the sashing all set. So that was terrific. And then I came home, and I had an extra backing that I had, like, years ago. I had started a holiday project and never finished it, and so I just put the backing with the center print and, some plain borders. I had just set that aside to use some, and it's the exact size I needed for this sampler. So, like I said at the beginning, life is good. I have been having wonderful wins in my quilting studio, and now that I've bragged about it, I'm probably going to break a needle or something. And is anyone thinking of back to school yet? I know folks back east and up north probably have another month of vacation left because you guys are in school so much later. Arizona is so off schedule with the rest of the United States. It's pretty crazy. My daughter's in college, so she has a few more weeks, but until she starts her next semester. But public K-12 is starting this week. Like the school right up the street from us starts tomorrow. So that one, do I have? Yes, I have one more set of strips. Oh, and I was talking about fabric, saying that I don't buy the binding at the same time as the rest of my quilt. I just wait and see, because sometimes I do have enough in my stash that I can find something that works. And half the time it takes me a year to get around to quilting something. But I have realized over the years that most quilts take, if you don't make huge queen and king size quilts, they take about half a yard for binding. So just, find a good fabric, buy half a yard, and you'll have enough for binding. My tip of the week for you. Oops, and I forgot to backstitch on that one. So when I started, like I said, it's a hard habit for me to get into. I really have to remind myself if I am in a situation where I want to backstitch, because I never sewed my own clothes. So I'm not used to that, ever having to do that. And when I learned to quilt, it was just like, you don't need to backstitch. You're going to sew those pieces into something else. So they don't really need to be secure. But I did want them to be secure on the outside edge of my quilt. So like right here, this seam on the outside would start to fray if I don't get that quilted right away. Okay, so I've got those two edges. So I'm going to finger press just a couple inches here at the edge because I don't want to get up and go to the iron for these rows right now. So we'll just finger press those, and I can make that work with the side border as I turn it 90 degrees to do the top and bottom. And then which one do I will go ahead and fight with the bulk of the quilt? Because that's always the next determination. Do you want the quilt on the bottom and the border strip on the top as it goes through the machine, or do you want the border on the bottom and the quilt on the top? And I am putting the border on the bottom for this part because I tend to go by the number of seams. If I have seams I want to pay attention to, make sure they don't get flipped over, I put those on the top. And there are a few more seams on the quilt side rather than the border side that only has the one seam to worry about. So we can get that going. Set that aside. Ooh, she knows. So what else fun is going on in the world? We have a new Cotton Cuts mystery starting. If you hang out with me on Wednesdays, you'll start to see that project in rotation. We've been working on the Flyway mystery for most of 2025, and we are just about to start the Under the Sea mystery. So everybody's looking for their packages that are starting to be mailed out. So come back in a couple weeks and we'll show you that project. If Tasha's still around, she'll have to let us know if she was brave enough to do a second project. She got the very brightest colorway for the Flyway mystery, and there were some issues with contrast on some of the pieces. So I feel bad. You always hate for someone to have a bad experience with a mystery quilt, but that is kind of the risk. Since it is a mystery and you don't know what it's going to look like, I was telling my friends that I'm going to teach a mystery pattern for Sew a Jelly Roll Day at my local quilt shop. And so, of course, as I'm mentioning that, it's a jelly roll quilt. And one gal says, well, what does it look like? And I said, well, that's the mystery part of it. So my advice whenever I'm telling people about mysteries is you need to do a little bit of research and see if you like the designer's overall style. And that way you can, if you know right away that, oh my gosh, those pieces look, or those blocks look too complicated. I don't like how she puts things together, or he, as the case may be. You, you can stay away. Or if you really would prefer to know what the project is. But I like a little mystery in my life. I'm not, and at this point, excuse me, at this point, I've been quilting for enough years that I'm going to give away most of these quilts anyway, so I don't have a lot of need to love everything. I can sew it and give it away, no problem. So, hello, Amanda. Thanks so much for being here. Remembering to do my back stitching on the corner. Amanda was one of my Christmas in July swap friends. So we did a gift exchange to celebrate Christmas in July this year. And you can go back on my channel and find that video from July 25th. So much fun to collaborate and have those videos premiere, and we all hopped around to each other's channel to see everybody's reveal. So that was a lot of fun, and I think we're going to do it again next year. Everybody enjoyed the process, so we'll keep that going. So again, when I do the wing it method and I have extra, my extra long strip, I'm just going to cut right even with that existing border, and that will even up the quilt. And I do my own quilting, so if I have ripply borders and things aren't quite square, then it's my own fault and I can deal with it. If you send your quilts out to someone, please ask them how they prefer to work, because they may want you to, take a little more care with your borders and square everything up before it gets on the long arm, or before they have to deal with it as a domestic quilter. But this is, when you have your own long arm, it's definitely, I reap what I sow, and I will live with the consequences of not having that border attached exactly square. Oh yeah, Amanda is saying it was her first collaboration video, and yeah, you always have to just try it, and then you figure out what works and what doesn't. And as YouTube content creators, we can always figure out how to, what special clips we need to remember to record, and what we can add in to those pre-recorded videos. Okay, since I already have my quilt in place, I'm going to reverse the process, and this time the quilt is on the bottom and my border strip is getting added to the top. So we'll line that up. And my edges aren't that great because, you know, they were hand trimmed and not lined up with a rotary cutter or a ruler. So you get to see lots of improv piecing on this one. Just completely winging it the whole way. Checking my seams as I go to make sure they all lay flat. Into the long strip of the inner border. Yes. As I'm sitting here thinking of other conversation topics, we could talk about the quilt math, the proportions for borders. But then I was thinking that's too geeky and people don't care. They just do what the pattern tells them to. Or you may have a standard, you know, you always do a 2.5-inch border and that's it. My rule of thumb is always a fraction of the block size. So if I have an even numbered block, then a 2-inch and a 4-inch border will work well. And of course, 1-inch borders always are fine because everything can be divisible by 1, and that nice little 1-inch makes a nice frame for most any block size. The other thing is you want to keep it proportional. Like if you had a small block and you did a wide sashing, like let's say you had a 4-inch block and you did a 3-inch sashing, just for an example, that 3-inch is almost the total size of your block. And so it's going to shrink. That block is going to look super, super tiny, surrounded by all this other space. I really do like the accent border that's about a quarter to a third. So like 6-inch blocks with a 2-inch accent border. And then you can go back to a bigger size. A 3-inch would be half. That's always a nice ratio and gives you some balance there for your blocks. So those are just some of the things I think about. With this quilt, my blocks are 6 inches wide. So I did a 2-inch sashing. So there's my third. And you can see how that frames it. It still looks balanced. And then I repeated and did a 6-inch border. So I have the main block is 6 inches wide, 2-inch accent, 6-inch finished border. And I could have taken this down to 4, you know, and that would give you a nice proportion there. But I was also trying to get my overall quilt size to be in that 55 to 65 inch range. And this sampler quilt, I think, finishes, if I remember my math correctly, 54 by 70. So a nice throw size, small twin. Ah, that didn't work at all. I was trying to match up my seams and I realized that I had gone shooting off the side and my fabric wasn't even getting caught in that seam. So let's rip back a ways and we will pay attention. Go. Line everything back up again. That's the problem when you wing it. You don't know where the end of your fabric is, so you have it's easier to get off track. Okay, welcome back, Tasha. Glad you got the kids down. And I am done. So there is I'm going to hold it at an angle and that way you can see more of it. I positioned some of those blocks up towards the top and then you have this bottom section with the zigzag blocks down at the other end. So finish for this stage, of course, you know, I have to quilt it, but I'm in between customer quilts on my long arm. So I have a pantograph in mind with snowflakes to do on this. So I can go ahead if I figure out the backing situation. Hi, Sherry. Nice to see you. So that can move from one pile to another, from the work in progress to the quilt top pile. So I had a feeling that I would finish that. So I've got my temperature quilt ready to go. And I was working on this last week. I keep everything in a nice jumbo Ziploc. And we are in the hot months. So I have some look over at the workspace. I've got some peach. This dark green fabric is my 70 degree temperature, and that is a peachy shade. And then I've got peach and yellow. That yellow is my 80 degrees. The peach is 90 degrees. And then we jump to orange. And that color's not coming through on my computer camera monitor at all. That orange and butter yellow. So yellow is the 80s. Orange is my 100-degree days. So let me get my chart out. Where did I put that? Oh, I pulled this whole set out. I've got splotchy polka dots for rainy days. And then I'm sewing these into rows. And so I need to finish up May. And then I had started on June, but I didn't have the right, I had run out of cut triangles for my green days, or for my 70 degrees. So I've got a stack prepared here. You can see the sheet where I keep track and check off all the temperatures and the blocks as I make them. And I am obviously over a month behind. So that's why I was just going to finish those borders and get back to work on my temperature quilt. I like to have different projects for you each week. With the mystery quilt, that's a block of the month, so that's easy to rotate. So I like to have about, 4 different projects so that I can rotate through them and still make progress. You guys, I get so much done sitting here chatting with you that it really helps me lead a balanced life. A little bit of fun stuff and a little bit of work. Thanks, Sherry. She said she likes how I'm doing the blocks. I wanted something relatively simple, but half rectangle triangles are my signature element these days. I love to design blocks that use half rectangle triangles. Got to be a little bit different, and that's my tagline for my patterns. And as I tell everyone, the trick to half rectangle triangles, if you look over here where I'm laying it out on my workspace camera, you want to have everything right sides up, and you can lay it out in the correct orientation, because sometimes this seam goes uphill and sometimes it goes downhill. So you do have to pay attention. And then you don't want to turn things around so that everything lines up when you stitch, which I did the other day. I cut my fabrics and kept them paired up like this and just went ahead and sewed. And then I opened it up and I was like, that's not right, because this is not a rectangle. I don't know how well you can see that. And this one fabric I didn't iron, and it's still giving me fits and wanting to fold over. But that is not a rectangle. So when you put your fabrics in the correct orientation, it is a rectangle right now, fold them right sides together, and you notice you have 2 mountain peaks. Your triangles do not line up, and that is okay. That's what you want when you're sewing half rectangle triangles. You don't want things to be lined up, which is counterintuitive, but you get used to it. And then you have a date with the seam ripper when you forget, like I did the other day. So, okay, so the next step, I need to make some room here because we have to press. I always like to press my seams open on half rectangle triangles. And those of you that have sewn with me before, you know I explain over and over and over again, but you never know. There might be someone who's never seen anyone sew half rectangle triangles, and it's always fun to learn new techniques. So I will go ahead and give that lesson over and over again. And now I sewed these wrong. So my leader ender was something else. So, well, they're just little scraps, so it's not that big a deal. Okay. And I've got my Aliso travel iron off to the side, getting ready to help me out here. And whoops, I can trim that excess thread. Okay, so I need to get, I've been saying the last few weeks, this is kind of awkward to press with my travel iron because it doesn't quite reach the full length of the table that I have it sitting on, and the plug is at the other end of the table. So I just need to grab my extension cord and get that all set up. And I was talking last week too about having a different camera set up. Way back when I first started YouTubing and, you know, thought this was going to be my creator life for a while, I imagined having a dedicated camera set up, you know, mounted on the wall. You could do a remote control and film yourself and just have it always available. And I have not made that studio dream a reality yet. I bring my laptop up and I plug my phone in and we just make it work. And if any of you have your own channel, I know, Sherry, you have your own channel. If you'd like to come talk about how to film and make videos for YouTube, I have a Discord channel, which is a free discussion board, and I can certainly send you the link. So just email me or leave a comment. I don't see the live comments after the video ends, but if you leave another comment for me on my post, you can find my Discord, or I can share my Discord link. Okay, so then I have to do some gadget arms. Nope, not going to work. I have to walk around and find my ruler. The other reason I like doing half rectangle triangles on these videos is I get to show you my very own ruler. This is the True Blue Quilts Little Bit Different ruler. And it is 6.5 by 9.5. That's the little bit different part. And it has markings for half rectangle triangles. So you know how a regular ruler will have the 30-degree line, the 60-degree line, the 45-degree line. Well, rectangles are different. They don't always follow those 30 and 60 lines. So it's really helpful to have a specialty ruler. And this one, right in the corner, I've got all the markings for the size units that I like to use in my little bit different blocks and my temperature quilt. So I can just quickly line that up in the corner, and it is positioned in the right place, and I can come up with my cute little half rectangle triangles. And you can only get this size ruler from me. So if that interests you, hop over to truebluequilts.com and I will get one sent over to you right away. And the other thing is my ruler manufacturer uses a non-slip coating called Easy Grip. And so your ruler does not slide around. It kind of sticks to the fabric there, keeps it in place. So I'm going to have to update my website with my holiday quilt-along. That's going to start in September 6th, I think. I don't think I'm starting any earlier than that, but I haven't looked at the calendar. You know, I looked at the calendar yesterday and I forgot, and today I didn't go into September. Hard to believe we're already in August. We're coming up on August here real soon. Okay, so I've got my blocks trimmed. I can find my other strip. Where was I? I left myself a note. Sticky notes are very handy. And I stopped on May 28th. Okay, and so then the 29th was a 90 and an 80, so one of these guys. Let me take that sticky note out. I like to get my leader enders out of the way. Okay, so that was that, and then we have the 107. Those two go in. I have to kind of play leapfrog with this chain piecing. So that's why I have my monthly strip, and then I've got the individual blocks that I can get sewn together, and then I've got my other strip, just so that I can chain piece and keep everything matched up. So June 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, another. June. Oops, I don't have those blocks prepped, do I? Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. I end up marking off in multiple places on my spreadsheet. So that's why when I'm working on this project, I'm mumbling a lot, because I'm double checking that I've got the right color combinations for the right day. And then when it's added to the row, I mark it off. And May is complete. This is the merry month of May. We had 2 days in a row with some sprinkles. Sprinkles on my windshield is how I count rainy days. And then we got very consistent with our temperatures. Not a lot of variation there at the end of the month. And I am going to put these rows horizontally in my quilt. So May is done and can be set aside. And like I said, I keep a little sticky note tab so that I can keep things in the correct order and get them organized. Okay, we had and then we went into a stretch. You can see I color coded my spreadsheet too. And we have all of the same, almost the same temperatures for the entire month of May. After this one green piece, I don't get to use green again for until I hit July. We cooled off for a day because there was some rain that came through in July. Okay. Okay, and then these, I've got some 90s. These poor guys, I repeated, I made extra, and I'm not going to be able to use those in my row for several, probably until September, unless we have some more cooling off, because I'm going to need quite a bit more yellow. I don't have a very big stack of triangles prepped for that yellow that I need. And everything, we're going to have a whole big row that's all that's all yellow and orange here. And I mentioned at one point that I really wanted to have some variety, and I just didn't go out and find another orange. I think I looked, and I don't. Orange is one of those tricky colors because I was really going for this pumpkin-y orange, and I have stuff that's either too dark, it turns into like a rusty red, or it's just not the right shade. And so I'm gonna go with it. And I do have a variety of yellow fabrics, so we'll get some, because I really like scrappy. I don't like seeing the same block with the same fabrics over and over and over. But you know, June, when it gets hot, it's just like that. Same thing over and over. So I'll stop whining about it and just put it together. is the 8. And then we'll have to get into this. Okay, so I can do one more because we had this one more cool day, cool overnight. And then everything was. I need a couple more of these orange and yellows. And here is my start to June. The bottom half is the low temperature of the day, and the top of the block is the high temperature. And that is the start of June. 8. So cross that off. Okay. And that is where we are going to leave things today, because I don't want to mess around with the iron again and have to change my workspace all around. And I'm here on the West Coast and we haven't had dinner yet, so I need to go get that started. And I hope everybody has a lovely quilty day, and I will talk to you very, very soon. I should have a new tutorial block pattern coming out this weekend, and back here, same time, same place. Next week, I will have a special guest. So we will have company and lots of quilting chat while we sew next week. So set your timers and I'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.